Blog Talk Radio.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Greetings, Gus T Renegade. Context of White Supremacy. Going live, tripping over the extension cord. Live show, a little later than anticipated, but we're able to get everything taken care of. Program scheduled to talk about, of course, racism, white supremacy, hopefully to replace the system of white supremacy with justice. We were here to meet with the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites in Seattle, Washington. They had a Summer Solstice jamboree scheduled. Thank you, sir, back at the bus hooking me up. Yeah, they have a flyer, the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites. There are 3 listed ways to get involved in 2009. Come to a monthly public meeting. Number 2, join a campaign committee. Number 3, become a Coalition of Anti-Racist White member. I was hoping to meet with some of the white people who participate in this organization, get constructive information on what they do, what their purpose is, and all that good stuff. But this is Seattle. Unfortunately, it rained yesterday, so the event was canceled. Non-white people, we don't always get the best information. We didn't know that it was canceled, so we came anyway, and we're disappointed. However, one of the members present actually is her home. She was gracious enough to allow non-white people to hang out and have a discussion on racism, white supremacy. We've enjoyed incredible brownies, the best root beer one non-white person has ever had in life, and other treats. And we continue, and we're at a fire. We're doing the show. She's going to break down exactly where we're doing this show at as we watch the sunset. But we have one of the members online now. She's going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about the organization. Go right ahead.
Hey, I'm Kelly, and it is my house here, and we were going to do this fundraiser, Coalition of Anti-Racist White Folks. We do things all year, but today was supposed to be a benefit for one of the groups we're working with this year. But because of the rain, we're not having it, and I'll say we're not having it today. We're just postponing it till August, so we'll make it happen again later when it's more likely to be a sunny day.
Outstanding.
I'm glad you're here, though. Just came on in, and we've been having a great conversation this afternoon. There's, like 8 of us or so?
I am glad that we came as well. We've been having very constructive dialogue about the system of racism, white supremacy, which is why I requested if we could go ahead and get the show live to share with our listeners, because I think we have had a lot of good information. So we're going to share with our listeners. Same way we start every program. Most pertinent piece of information. Kelly, are you a white person?
I am white.
Wonderful. In this show, the context of white supremacy, I define the system of white supremacy to be a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to mistreating and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you feel that is a correct and accurate definition for racism, white supremacy?
Yeah, that's working definition, yes.
Okay. As a white person in the system of white supremacy, are you a racist white supremacist?
Yeah, I say I can't help but be, because I, as a white person, benefit every day from just the color of my skin.
All right. Okay. I guess, have you ever mistreated an individual because they are not white?
Yes, I have. Partly it's because I live in America. I live in the world in 2009 where white supremacy dominates. And as a participant in that, I have, even if it wasn't maybe my personal action, maybe it was my lack of action, or maybe it was because we haven't been able to overcome racism yet, that it happens inevitably. Then there may be also some times where me personally, just out of ignorance or, for whatever reason, might also perpetrate it at a personal level. Even though from where I am right now, I would try not to. I would be making an effort to be aware and not perpetrate it at a personal level, and even working as a person in a system trying to overcome racism, but it still inevitably happens. Racism itself hurts people of color. It hurts everybody, but it hurts certainly people of color more.
One request I'll make for this program, Dr. Robert Jensen, author of The Heart of Whiteness, he's been on the program. Anyone listening, you can check the archives and hear the broadcast where he shared his views on white supremacy. In his book, he said that non-white is the most accurate term to describe individuals who are not white in the system of white supremacy. Actually, on the program, he said that victim of white supremacy would be even more accurate than non-white. But I would like to request that we substitute non-white for people of color. I have a lot of reasons why I dislike that term. If anyone's interested, you can check my blog, and you can see my reasons. My blog is racism-notes.blogspot.com. But if I could make that request that we use the term non-white, that would be constructive, I think.
Okay.
Outstanding. As an admitted racist in a system of white supremacy, your organization is the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites. If you could share with us what the purpose of this organization is and what you all are supposed to accomplish with this organization.
I joined the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites, and I can speak from my experience. We participated together. We kind of met up after we participated in an Undoing Institutional Racism workshop that took place. I actually went through it a couple times over the last few years. And it's people of all races, people who come together to learn about institutionalized racism. It's put on in Seattle by the People's Institute Northwest. Probably happens 2 or 3 times, 3 or 4 times maybe a year here. And by now there are hundreds of people in the Seattle area who've participated in it. And one of the things that happens when you get through it and you have an increased understanding of institutionalized racism is that you have a desire to work against racism, to undo institutionalized racism. So one way to do that, of course, is to continue your own personal education, and another way is to try to take action and to work in community to do that. It makes you more effective, and we can learn from each other as white people, and white people, I think, have a responsibility to teach other white people. And we can work to undo racism, in the wider community. So what we've done is we've started meeting regularly and educating ourselves, and then also have some open forums where we invite other people, who haven't maybe been through the institutionalized racism workshop to start examining racism and our lives in ourselves and in our organizations and our society. And what we've chosen to do, this small group that I'm in, I say small, it's like 30 to 40, 50 people maybe that meets periodically once a month and sometimes more, depends on the activities. And we have chosen projects that we wanted to do this year, and we're sticking with them through 2009. It'll evolve, it'll change. We'll become better informed, better allies. And right now, our 3 projects that we're working on are supporting 3 people of color-led organizations, is how it's termed for us. One is Communities Against Rape and Abuse, which is a organization that works to end sexual assault and sexual, rape. And it's African American women-led, and they have a framework of how they want to respond that's different than some other organizations that work against sexual assault and rape. And our commitment is to raise money for them. That's what they've asked us to do, and so that's what we're doing to support them. Another group is Justice Works, which is working in particular about the experience of African American men in prisons. And our work with them is to support legislation that would change the 3 strikes you're out work that just happened in the legislative session this time. We didn't get very far, but we're going to keep at it. The third group is El Comité, which works on immigrants' rights here in Seattle. And our support there is to be present when called upon to do so. Like there was a big May Day rally, and so to turn out in support of immigrants' rights. So those are our 3 campaigns right now, in addition to educating ourselves and meeting and being good allies.
Very interesting. I have found non-white people, victims of white supremacy, have language deficiencies. I certainly am in that category. So one of the tools that I try to use is to concisely restate things that white people say in discussions on white supremacy. One, to make sure that I have accurately understood what has been said, and to help deal with the language deficiencies that non-white people have. So would it be correct to say that your organization, the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites, is working to replace white supremacy with justice? You have various projects that you are working on this calendar year with different non-white organizations and educating yourselves about racism, white supremacy. Would that be a correct restatement of what you all, your organization, the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites, is doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good restatement.
I try. I have a couple questions. I have major issues. The admitted white supremacist known as Tim Wise, the Elvis Presley of counter-racism. That program is on in the archives. He was on the show June 1st. You can go in the archives, check the program out. He admitted that referencing him as the Elvis Presley of counter-racism, there's a lot of truth to that statement. That is exactly what he said when I said it to him on the program. There's a non-white person snickering, sitting a few seats away from me. He said it, check the archives. I told him that another non-white person heard the show and said it to him live. So check it out. And he said there's a lot of truth to that. Tim Wise, admitted white supremacist. But he said he's an anti-racist, and I feel that it's illogical, and I suspect that it could be a conscious act of racism for any white person in the system of white supremacy to say that they are an anti-racist, particularly if you have admitted to being a racist white supremacist. I guess to help my understanding here, could you share with our listeners what an anti-racist does that is different from a regular white person in the system of racism, white supremacy?
I can speak for myself. I wouldn't begin to speak for Tim Wise, who I greatly respect, but I would say if we are white, we are racist because we're benefiting from the system of racism. And if we're anti-racist, that means we recognize our privilege and we're working to make things more just, to make our society more just. So basically working to undo that system of privilege, actively organizing. working in coalition, working to educate ourselves, and to try to bring justice.
Okay. How would a non-white person be able to tell which white people are working against the system of racism, white supremacy, as long as that system exists?
It would be based on talking to them or observing their actions.
Talking to them or observing their actions. Okay. And so when I talk to this white person, observe this white person who says that they are anti-racist, what sort of things should I hear? What sort of things should they be saying to me? What sort of things should I observe happening that would demonstrate that they are anti-racist and doing these things to work against the system of white supremacy?
Well, the first thing that leaps to mind for me is they're talking about racism. They're recognizing it and owning up to it, and it's on the table. You know, we're talking about it. It's not something that we act like it's not in the room. It's here. It's in our lives, and so we're just, you know, upfront about it, and it would be something we'd be conversing about as we are.
Okay. With the system of white supremacy still being in place, I am unclear as to, just in the conversation right now, like there's nothing that I feel has been demonstrated for me to say, okay, Kelly is practicing anti-racism. She is an anti-racist, and I can say that because I couldn't say because she came on my radio program, because a lot of admitted racists have come on my program. And I couldn't say because I've been at her house, because I know a lot of racist people who have had non-white people at their house. So what could I point to say this is evidence I am doing anti-racist work?
We're having this conversation.
Because we are having a discussion about racism, that is evidence that you are anti-racist.
Yes, it may be weak. I don't know. I guess I'm getting that maybe it's not enough or not more. What I would say is it's where we are at the moment, and the conversation's alive. I'm saying I'm a racist. We're recognizing the fact that society is structured so much that privilege happens based on race, that white people benefit from the color of their skin. Oh, power. To talk about power, one of the people here is just raising an issue we talked about earlier, that where I'm saying privilege, he's asking me to say power, that I have power because I'm white. I agree that it's true, and I'm happy to use that word.
Okay. So as long as the power system of racism, white supremacy is correct, I guess the reason that I really have issue with this, I do not feel it's accurate for anyone, non-white or white, to say that they are anti-racist or even a counter-racist under the system of white supremacy, is because there's really no way you could evidence that. And I guess I would ask, you said the evidence that you are an anti-racist is that we're having this discussion. I would ask, do you think it's possible that a white person could practice racism, white supremacy, and still engage in a conversation like this about racism, white supremacy with a non-white person?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So how would I be able to pick out the difference between you and that white person who's practicing racism and still engaging in this discussion?
Well, I can say that I'm still benefiting from being white in a racist society.
Would it be correct to say you are still practicing and participating in the system of white supremacy?
Yes,
Okay.
because it exists, and I'm working to some degree, you know, at all times on trying to raise consciousness and bring justice.
Okay. And that what you just said right there, in my view, I think it would be most constructive for the non-white people, victims of white supremacy. We had a pretty thorough discussion earlier about who is more informed about racism, white supremacy, and the conclusion that I came to, and no one contested. So I'll have to say that'll just have to ride because no one here had an argument with it. or at least if they did not voice it, that as long as the system of white supremacy exists, the white people who practice racism, white supremacy, are demonstrating they are more knowledgeable about this system than the non-white people. So as long as that is true, I think it would be constructive in terms of helping non-white people if white people just said, we're racist. Any white person that wants to help, if they would be truthful and admit, I am a racist white supremacist, we are in a system of racism, white supremacy, and I will be a racist white supremacist as long as this system exists. I think if more white people could be honest and sharing that information with non-white people, that would make a lot more progress. That would be much more constructive for non-white people than having white people say, we're anti-racist, even though they know they are racist. I think it's very confusing when you have white people say, I'm a racist and an anti-racist. How do you feel about that?
I see what you're saying, and I think as long as the system is structured as it is, then yes, I will be a racist as a white person, and all white people will be. And I think that even if I'm working to end white supremacy, that as long as the system exists, I'm still a racist.
Okay. I think even your organization, I think it would be much more constructive and accurate if the name of the organization was Coalition of Racist Whites Who Are Working to Oppose or Replace White Supremacy with Justice. How do you feel about that?
I hear you. I'm going to talk to the folks about it. I think that brings another degree of self-awareness to like us thinking about how we name ourselves, and does it really help us be effective at the work we do? So I'm going to talk to folks about what you're saying.
Is it any way that the non-white people present could attend this discussion so we could hear this going on? Because you know white people are deceptive, so I would like to observe this discussion go down to see if this takes place. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Are the non-white people here agreeing to attending?
Can I pass the phone around? Some other people want to talk?
Wait a minute. We have more questions. No. The white person is trying to get off the stand. No. We have more questions.
Sharing the microphone.
We have more questions, and we have other non-white people. Yellow Manny is in the house. Back of the bus is in the house. Non-Mighty Wick. We have other non-white people who would like to ask questions, and we actually have another white person. We were having a lot of conversation around sexual intercourse between non-white people and white people, as always. So we definitely want to talk about that. I have a couple more questions, and then I want to get some of the other non-white people in to ask their questions. In terms of the work that your organization does, do you all do anything in terms of making an effort to inform non-white people about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works?
I can't say historically whether we have or not, but I know our focus now is on white people educating other white people and supporting people of color-led organizations as white allies. Really, believe me, it's enough just to have the goal of trying to educate other white people, you know.
Educate white people about
racism.
About racism, okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel that non-white people need to be educated about racism in terms of specifically what it is and how it works?
Yes, I guess so, but I feel like people who are victims of white supremacy have an experience of that white supremacy that they understand fully well, and I wouldn't begin to tell them about it. But we could talk about the system that we live in, that they suffer under and that I perpetrate as a white person, and that we could bring our awareness to it together. But me telling them, that feels a little bit like just more supremacy, frankly.
Well, would you say that regardless of what you do, that is going to be practicing racism, white supremacy, as long as the system exists?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it would be constructive if your organization, Coalition of Racist Whites, I'll say, if that's accurate, do you think that would be constructive if admitted racists made an effort to share constructive and accurate information about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, do you think that would be constructive to share that information with non-white people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you all think that's something you all could work on doing? Because I think that is paramount. I think the overwhelming evidence shows that non-white people are woefully confused and misinformed about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. And I have seen consistently where white people speaking honestly about racism, white supremacy has an incredible impact on non-white people. So do you think that's something your organization could work on including as one of their primary objectives?
I can say theoretically, yeah, possibly. I'm only a member of it, and we'll bring it and talk to the folks, and then together as a group we can decide whether to do it or not. So I just can not, kind of jump ahead of that process. But I think with just having this conversation together, if we expand the circle and all have this conversation together, that the group could undertake that. Yeah, I think it's within, maybe that's another strategy of being effective and would certainly be worth talking about and taking action on. We aren't the only ones doing this work, though. I want to say that we came together as white people to do the work because we have, the privileges. We work in coalition, though, with a wider group, and, all the folks who've been through the People's Institute here in Seattle, are people from different races. It's just the subset that are the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites. So, already there are more people than just the white people doing this work.
But I want to be clear, you did say that that is something you would be willing to take to the other group members to see if they would be willing in doing the work of speaking honestly and sharing constructive information with non-white people about how racism, white supremacy works, what it is, and how it works. That's something you would be willing to talk to other group members about?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. We would like to see that happen. I have maybe two more, and I'm going to pass, bring in some of the other non-white people. You all have the phone number to call in so that I can put you on the switchboard. I think they're calling in now. I'll ask my two, and then I'll bring them in. In my studies and research with racism and white supremacy, one of the major stumbling blocks I've seen is that non-white people are not suspicious of all white people. So I guess I'll ask number one, do you think it would be constructive if non-white people were suspicious of all white people, no exceptions in the system of white supremacy?
I guess I can see where that would be helpful, constructive, if you want to say, for maintaining one's, not being vulnerable. But I wouldn't think of that as the human ideal, no.
Well, the system of white supremacy is not the human ideal, so we are far from ideal circumstances already.
Yeah,
So in just being truthful and acknowledging the situation that we're in, do you think it would be constructive if non-white people, in acknowledging how far we are from ideal circumstances and in an effort to correct that, were suspicious of all white people, no exceptions?
Yeah.
Okay. Earlier you said that in the system of white supremacy, all white people are racist. Do you think it would be constructive if non-white people adjusted their thought, speech, and action to the belief that every white person, no exceptions, is a racist in the system of white supremacy?
Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding. Does your work... go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, it's helpful to raise all of our awareness about the institutionalized racism in our society and to give people the framework of understanding about that institutionalized racism so that when they hear this white supremacy terminology and talking about white supremacy is not a good thing, that, you're going to have to give a little context sometimes for people to be able to hear that. Because people, I'll say white people, are very defensive about being called racist because they know it's not good. And so if you give the context of we're benefiting from the institutionalized racism, therefore you are a racist, that helps people to be able to understand it better and not immediately have that defensive kind of, reaction that keeps them from being able to hear and think and analyze and understand their role in it.
Very interesting. I want to point out, number one, the title of the show, The Cows, Context of White Supremacy. Number two, I was sharing, or we were saying, that it would be constructive for white people to share with non-white people that all white people are racist, white supremacists. And your response dealt with how white people would receive that and be defensive. I wasn't really addressing talking to white people about this. I just thought that was interesting, that her response dealt with how white people would feel and become defensive about hearing that, and it really wasn't what I was saying. But you did say you think it would be constructive if non-white people adjust their thought, speech, and action to the belief that all white people are racist in a system of white supremacy.
Yeah.
Has your organization, the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites, have they presented that information to any of the non-white people that you work with, either that the non-white people should be suspicious of all white people or that all white people are racist? Have you all presented that information to any of the non-white people that you've worked with?
I can't really say historically. I heard about it and became active in the CARW because of hearing about it at the Undoing Institutionalized Racism, which was taught by people of color. So when I heard it first, it wasn't CARW people telling it. It was CARW people learning it and understanding it and then adopting it as a framework that we're working to make social change in. So does that answer your question?
I guess I would want to be clear, have, to your knowledge, since you have been involved with the group, has any white member of your organization ever made an effort to share with any non-white person that all white people are racist and or that it would be constructive for non-white people to be suspicious of every white person, no exception, in the system of white supremacy?
I don't doubt that people have talked about it, but whether we've encouraged or even used the word suspicious and talk about the benefit of starting from a, being suspicious as a starting point, I don't know about that. I would be thinking not, but I can't really say 100% for sure.
Okay.
But we frankly recognize white supremacy and the institutionalized racism with, people of color in the community, victims of white supremacy culture. Like, we work as allies with people, and we're aware of that together, whether, we've told it or we've heard it, whether, we all heard it from the Undoing Institutionalized Racism that People's Institute puts on. I can't really say, but we're aware of it together, put it that way.
Someone in the chat room, I'm bringing on the other non-white people, 206-683 on live, 720 you are on live, and 253 you are on live. I hope you all are probably sitting a little too close. There's probably going to be some interference, so if one person is talking, the other people might want to mute their phones so that there's not distortion in the line that might be constructive. If that's too much, then, work it out as best you can. But as I just said, the lines 253, wait a minute. Yeah, 253 you're on live, 720 you're on live, and 206 you are on live. One of the people in the chat room said that there are racist black organizations. Kelly, if you could address that. Do you think any black person or black group can be racist in a system of white supremacy?
No.
Can you explain why, please?
Well, if we're talking about institutionalized racism in our society, then any non-white person is not in a position of supremacy. They may have personal bias, they may have prejudice, they may have bigotry, but they're not in this framework we're not talking about the same thing.
Outstanding. I'm passing the microphone, Gus T Renegade, COWS, Context of White Supremacy, with one of the members, Kelly, from the Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites. I don't know who's first up, but whoever wanted to ask questions, lines are open. Feel free.
Am I online right now?
Yes, you are, sir. This is Yellow Manny.
Hi. I heard you say that, if that's correct, all white people are racist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that the only people that could be racist are white people?
We're benefiting from the white supremacy, yes.
So the only people who could be racist are white people?
With this definition, yes.
Okay, so would it be correct to say that white equals racist and racist equals white? If only white people can be racist and all white people are racist and only racist people can be white, would it be correct to say that white equals racist and racist equals white?
Yeah.
So would you say that an anti-racist white is an oxymoron then? An anti-racist racist is an oxymoron?
Well, I hear the way we've been talking about it, yes, but I think that even people who are benefiting from racism, from white supremacy, like a white person like me, can also be working to end that system. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's the difference between working in it and finding.
My phone's about to give out, so if this goes out, I'll have to pick another phone. But my phone's about to go.
Okay, and then I also agree with what you're saying. How you should it'd be productive to suspect that all white people are racist, and if this is the case, then in terms of sexual relations between whites and non-whites, how does that idea play out into sexual relations between whites and non-whites? In your view, if non-white people should all be suspicious that all white people are racist because you define white as racist. Hold on a second. We're having some technical difficulties here.
Could you just talk about it? I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I hear your question, and I'd like to answer it, but frankly, I feel ill-prepared to answer that. We were having this conversation over, lunch a little while ago, and I was learning more than I was able to contribute to it. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about it, and maybe we could interact a bit more. But what do you think about it?
Well, I did ask you a question, but I will answer some information. I believe that is incorrect. A victim of racism, which is all non-white people, should not want to have sex with racist people who are all white people, because white equals racist. And so I just think there's an unequal power dynamic at all times. A non-white individual would be forced to lie to themselves or to other people, and most likely both, if they are to engage in a sexual relationship with whites who are racist. And so since white equals racist, so I believe it is a very incorrect behavior. I think it makes non-white people unable to see racism for what it is and how it works. If you're having sex with someone, one of the most intimate physical encounters you can have with another human being or another person on this planet, I feel like that impedes non-white people's ability to suspect that all white people are racist. I mean, I don't understand how it would work. And so you're an admitted racist, and you said all white people are racist, and you've also admitted, if I can just get this on the show too, you've had sex with a non-white person. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, considering given all of this information about racism and white supremacy, and what you think about sexual relationships between whites and non-whites, given that all white people are racist and non-white people are victims of racism.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm going to give it more thought. In my interaction with my lover, I think we met at a place where we both recognize racism exists in our society, and we're, recognizing the power dynamics, how each of us experiences life in wider society, and try not to perpetrate it between ourselves. I hear what you're saying; it's like inevitable. So You know, we had relationship issues like any two people interacting do, and maybe some of those dynamics were about race. There were other complications too, of course, other aspects to our relationship. But
so can you give me some examples of how race played out in your relationships, sexual relationships, white and non-white?
I guess I could. I want to think about it some. I don't know. I just like having this in front of everybody makes me feel very self-conscious about trying to examine my own particular here. I'm willing to do it, but I want to think about it, frankly.
Take a second, because as a non-white person, I feel self-conscious all the time in the system of racism, white supremacy. So I think it's great that a white person is feeling self-conscious. That is fabulous. I wish it happened every day. And hopefully this is part of the course of replacing white supremacy with justice. 111, are you there? There's another caller on the line. Somebody just say hello and we'll hear your voice. Hello. Okay, we got somebody else. Is this you're calling in to ask questions or participate?
I'm calling in to ask questions, yes.
Okay. Are you a non-white person or a white person?
I'm a non-white person.
Okay, groovy. Hang on, Yellow Manny. He has some more questions, and then we'll get you too, sir. Is that okay if you hang tight?
That's okay.
Groovy. Hang tight. We'll get more. So continue, Yellow Manny. Oh, wait a minute. We had a question on the board. You had a question. It was about sexual relationships with non-white people and white people. Yes. So it's back to Kelly. We're still waiting.
Kelly's just contemplating and being self-conscious, but I'll wait though, because I'm very self-conscious too. I'm also retarded.
I'm a victim of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade, a.k.a. the legend of John Carter, the C.O.W.S, context of white supremacy. We are waiting on Kelly.
Well, okay, so it's one person that I've had relations with over all my years of being alive. So it's I'm stumbling here. I don't know which one to look at, and I'd want to look at all of them, and I'm not trying to avoid the question. Yeah, maybe y'all could be talking while I'm thinking. I don't know.
Okay, well, I have a follow-up question then while you're thinking. You said that race came up and it was inevitable. So if sexual relations between whites and non-whites, victims of racism and racists, if racism comes up inevitably, do you believe that suggests that perhaps it's incorrect behavior? Because every time this happens, inevitably, racism will be practiced.
Well, we still live in this society, and, you know, we're each affected, and then when we come together, you know, we bring some of that in.
I agree, but, could you answer the question, though? If it inevitably comes up, if racism is going to be practiced inevitably in every single relationship between whites and non-whites, which is the same thing as saying racists and victims of racism, and wouldn't it suggest that this is incorrect behavior? If every time you do this, you will invariably practice racism.
I guess I'm inclined to say yes, but I want to think about it still, and not to avoid the question, but because I want to be thoughtful, and I want to be able to be honest. And, you know, I guess it's never going to be a good thing to bring it into the relationship, but it is in there. And when I think of the word practice, that sounds like I'm participating on purpose with intention. And so the practice isn't there, but I think the dynamic is there.
You said you can practice racism, white supremacy, while being ignorant of it or unconscious of it. Is that correct?
And even when you're conscious of it, it's still there.
Yeah, so I'm saying that by act of practicing, you said you'd find it as purposeful and intentional and conscious. But you've also said that you don't actually need to be purposeful or conscious of this, and you could still practice racism, white supremacy.
That's
right. It's not just that you're culpable of it, but the fact that racism is being practiced in every sexual relationship between whites and non-whites.
It's a dynamic, yeah.
Yeah. Earlier, you were saying that the only thing that you believe that love could conquer racism, and then I asked you for your definition of love, and you were unsure, but I gave my definition, which is an irrational attraction that is illogical, and it can obviously come in different forms and different degrees. Like you can really love a candy bar irrationally, even though you know it might give you health problems, or if you eat too much of it. But at the end of the day, you could also love, you could love lots of things irrationally. And so you agreed to my definition of love, is that correct?
I was able to hear your definition and use it for our conversation, yeah. I don't think I would use that as my definition, but I'm going along with yours for sake of conversation here.
Well, what's your definition?
When I started talking about it, I even used the words that it's about having a heart open and a connection to another person. I wouldn't start with talking about love, talking about a chocolate bar, or talking about, what were the other examples there? We're talking about person-to-person love, though. That's a heart connection. And
what's a heart connection?
It's really hard to define. When you had irrational, what are you describing? A feeling, right? Was that what irrational is, a feeling?
No, irrational attraction.
Attraction, okay.
Feeling of attraction.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't start with the word irrational, and I probably wouldn't have started with attraction.
Well, you're saying the one thing that you know, or one thing you believe that could conquer racism was love. And if you can't define what love is, then you can't really define what can conquer racism.
Oh, well, I had what I was, something second.
Oh, you might have got kicked off.
Oh, no. She's coming back in. 720, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. And 111, are you there?
Hello?
Oh, I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. I would start with talking about love as a heart connection, from an open heart to an open heart, or if it's mutual. But I wouldn't start talking about an attraction as love. But that isn't to say you can't use that for your definition, and I can have a conversation with you using your definition. I'm just not saying that's where I would not have picked that for my definition.
You said the words that love could conquer racism.
Yeah.
So I would need to know your definition because you're the one saying love. So I just want to know what could conquer racism. Essentially, is what I'm asking, and that would have to be the definition of love because you said love could conquer racism.
Okay. For me then, for having this conversation, I'd be talking about a heart connection with another person as love, and that might overcome racism in the dynamic between two people. But it doesn't mean they don't still exist if it's happening now in a very racist society.
So then your definition of love is heart connection. In your definition, you basically said it couldn't conquer it and it would still be there. So then your previous statement was incorrect.
No,
one of them has to be incorrect.
I'm saying that the love that I'm using for definition can overcome some of the dynamic, if you're good at it, if you're able to, between two people, but you still exist in a racist society. And maybe it would take love to undo it in society. I'm not taking it there yet, but I don't see that as contradictory.
Well, I don't understand what a heart connection is. Like, you told me that a heart connection could conquer racism. I would again have to ask you what a heart connection means.
Okay. Well,
I wanted to point out, I'm sorry, a white person was here, and the white person cracked up laughing when she heard that, when you questioned about a heart connection. And Kelly, the admitted racist, said she said she knows that's difficult to explain. The white person found that very funny. I found that very funny as well. And the white person retrieved my beer. Life is grand. We are having a blast. The cows, context of white supremacy. Right on.
Well, here's a sad thing is I probably think about racism more than I think about, love and relationship stuff. I don't know. It's maybe a sad state of affairs from my personal life. But what I'm saying is I think, just when asked on the spur of the moment without being able to give a lot of thought to what I'm talking about with love, that's what I genuinely feel.
Okay, so just to summarize, I mean, you said that love could conquer racism, and you think about racism more than love, so it seems that you don't really know what could conquer racism, but you just think about racism a lot, and you're an admitted racist, so I don't know, that just sounds, I don't know, that sounds racist to me, I don't know, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, you're also admitted racist, I mean, by definition.
720, can you go ahead and if you have a question or comment, I want Yellow Manny to continue. I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to enjoy my beer and enjoy the fire and, 720?
Yes. Is this Gus T Renegade?
This is Gus T Renegade.
Yes, I have a question, and I don't know that it really pertains to this conversation. Well, I do have two questions. My first question is for you, Gus. I had listened to one of your old shows, and on that show you said that you had went, I believe, and done a talk at the University of Washington, Rethinking Diversity Conference or something?
The class, yes, sir.
Yes, and you said something about having video footage of that conference. Can you tell me how I can see the video footage?
One of the non-white people that I'm with, he recently put in a lot of effort to get that footage. I guess some white people did technical things with the footage that is beyond my understanding, but he has that footage on discs, and he said he was going to be willing to work with me to get me copies of the files. So one or both of us will hopefully be uploading it. If I get it, it'll be on my blog. So I guess if you shoot me an email, my email is huggybear, HUGGYBEAR @counter-racism.com. Shoot me an email. I will alert you when I get it on my blog. If I don't do it and this other non-white person does it, I'm in contact with him so I can direct you to his site wherever he puts it up at. Hopefully both of us will put it up. That would be really white of us, but it should be up soon.
Great. I would greatly appreciate that. I will send you an email. Great.
Okay.
Okay, and the question that I have for the white person is, and perhaps you also, I've heard it said that engaging in sexual relations with, for people to engage in sexual relations with non-white people is the greatest or worst form of violence that can be committed by a white person against a non-white person. Can either of you give me more information or more clarity about that statement?
I'll pass to Kelly first.
Okay.
I'm hearing you say that, and it's making me think that it was consensual. So,
720, could you please restate your question?
Okay. The question is, I have heard it stated that for a white person or a racist white supremacist person to engage in sexual relations with a non-white person is the worst form of violence that can be committed against a non-white person by a racist white supremacist person. And I would like to have more information about that. If you could give me more information about that. Is that clear? Was I clear? Is the question clear?
I think the question was clear. I don't have an answer. I'm going to think about what you've said. Gus, you going to talk?
Actually, a white person just asked me who made that statement. And I know Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Has said that the worst thing a white person can do to a non-white person in the system of white supremacy is to engage in sexual intercourse with that non-white person. He, in his code book, I believe, says that that is a maximum act of racist aggression against non-white people. And for anyone listening, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. has been on this program, so you can go in the archives and check out that show. It was in May. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, author of the ISIS Papers, she has also talked about this and also said that it is incorrect and that the non-white person is being completely confused and taken advantage of when this happens. Dr. Welsing has also been on this show. If you check the archives, she was on the program in March, so you can go back and listen to both of those shows. I know Dr. Welsing and I spent a lot of time talking about that. My view, I'm in total agreement. Actually, the white person that I was talking to earlier, matter of fact, white person on the phone here, can we get her to share her comment? She's saying no, I suspect she could be practicing racism right now. Because she said yes. She said yes. So the white person is practicing racism and refusing to reveal constructive information about racism, white supremacy. So I'll restate what she said. We were talking about the sexual intercourse piece, and I shared Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. He was on the program. He is the founder of the White Privilege Conference. He was on the program in May, and he said that according to his theory of incapability, white people, no exceptions, all white people are conditioned to see black people as niggers as long as the system of white supremacy exists. He later said he is in a relationship with an admitted racist, and that the admitted racist that he is in a sexual relationship with sees him as a nigger. I was sharing this information, and the white person who is practicing racism and refusing to come on the show said, "What? How can that be? How can you have a relationship under those circumstances?" And I said, "Write that down. That is exactly how I feel." And a non-white person wrote it down. We have it quoted with her name. Because we talked about it later, and she said, "I just do not understand how that can work." And I said, that is exactly why I feel it is totally incorrect for a white person to engage in sexual intercourse with a non-white person at any time during the existence of white supremacy. It is one of the worst things that can happen. Kelly, have you thought more? Do you need more time? Are you practicing racism by not talking as well?
I'm practicing reflection right now. I'm practicing learning right now. I'm not trying to avoid your question.
Okay.
I have something to say. The admitted, or not admitted, but the racist person who said that, she said she wasn't practicing racism. If you're practicing racism, you got to be racist. So the racist person who said that also said, I agree. I believe that it's totally incorrect and one of the worst things you can do for a white person to have sex with a non-white person under a system of racism, white supremacy. I explained to this female that I don't engage in sexual relationships with white people because I am non-white and I'm a victim of racism. I don't engage sex with racist people. And she said, I quote, "If you don't have sex with white people, you're racist." And I'm going to point...
That was a question.
Oh.
What did you say?
Well, since we are fighting for racism, like trying to make everybody equal, and then there's...
I'm not fighting for racism. I'm not fighting for racism. That's Freudian stuff here. She's fighting for racism. She's a racist. She practices racism. She's fighting for racism.
So we all want to be equal. But then you have, in the beginning of the day when everybody started coming here, I was questioning why somebody who wants equality, justice, to segregate one race to have sex with.
I did not segregate one race. I said, as a victim of racism, I would not want to have sex with racist people. I'm not segregating a race. These races have already been segregated. I mean, white people have already deemed themselves as dominant and godlike over non-white people. I didn't create this division. I'm responding to this division.
But how do you ever expect equality if everybody... No, if everything's segregated.
I don't have sex with white people?
It doesn't matter what race. If you segregate a race from the pool to have sex with.
What do you mean by segregated?
Segregate a race from, okay, I'm going to have sex with all these colors, but this. Just eliminate a certain pool.
From having sexual relationships
Sexual relations or friendship relations. Any relations. Say, okay, I'm going to have relations with all these, but I'm not going to with this race or this.
How does that promote justice or anti-racism? Like by having sex with all different races or by so-called segregating against one race? I mean, it's in the context of racism and white supremacy. Like, a victim of racism should not want to have sex with racist people. Like I don't see how that is practicing racism in any way, which is what you've implied. And this racist person also had sex with numerous non-white people. This is a racist person who had sex with non-white people.
I have.
That's what you said earlier.
I did.
Yeah.
Multiple races.
I don't see by having sex with white people how that promotes anti-racism or justice in any way. I only see how it promotes racism and white supremacy. Can you say that again?
Wait a minute. Gus said, I was agreeing with what Yellow Man said, and I said it promotes confusion, and the white person that is practicing racism said...
Well, I agree it provokes confusion with anything. With any race having sex with the opposite race, or a different race.
Opposite race.
Different race.
Opposite race.
Does it promote confusion among non-white people when they engage in sexual intercourse with white people under a system of white supremacy? I said, does it promote confusion for the non-white people when they engage in sexual intercourse with a white person under the system of white supremacy? Because that's what I'm saying. It causes confusion for the non-white people. Are you agreeing with that?
Confusion for me.
It causes confusion for you.
I'm confused.
Can you explain? How are you confused when you engage in...
Because everybody wants equality, but then justice. But then everybody's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have sex with everybody that's non-white, but then screw the white. We're not going to have sex with the white. It's like they're superior, we're not going to have sex with them. But we want to be equal with them, but we're not going to engage with them.
What did you say, that they're superior?
Well, that's what everybody's saying. That's what racist is.
Is that correct? Do you believe that in the system of racism and white supremacy, white people are superior?
That's what the whole racism thing is so far.
I would say this is a prime example of why non-white people in the system of racism and white supremacy should not engage in sex with white people. I'm a non-white person. Back of the bus, Malcolm X said you should be skeptical of what white people like. White people really do not like this. That non-white people in the system of racism, white supremacy, should not engage in sex with white people.
Say that again, please.
What? I thought he changed.
Who changed? Nobody here. None of the non-white people have changed.
Malcolm. Didn't he change to having...
To what?
You never stopped being a victim of racism.
No, but the whole idea of having sex with white people changed at the end, right?
He relented a tad towards the end, according to reports that I have seen. He did relent a tad, but he spent most of his time. See how informed white people are? Do you see how informed white people are? Yeah.
White people love to have sex with non-white people, and white people also love to practice racism. I believe they are the one and the same thing.
Non-white people to be victims?
No, we hate being victims. but we don't know we're victims. And white people take advantage of the fact
you don't
that
know
they are
superior
and dominant. I mean, if you're superior and dominant, I mean, you're taking advantage of someone. With someone with unequal power dynamics, engaging in sexual relations like parent-child, employer-employee, teacher-student, I mean, these are all looked down upon because of unequal power dynamics. If white people are superior and non-white people are therefore inferior, I mean, superior people should not be having sex and taking advantage of inferior people.
Confused non-white people.
Further, a question. In the system of racism, where white people are dedicated to mistreating and abusing non-white people, what does it say for a non-white person who willingly engages in sex with a white person? Sex is the action that reproduces. I mean, we have a desire to reproduce with someone that systematically mistreats us and will mistreat our offspring. Sounds like insanity.
I just want to go back to the Dr. Eddie Moore piece and make sure we capture that. Your thoughts on Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., founder of the White Privilege Conference, Black Victim of White Supremacy. What are your thoughts on him being in a sexual relationship with an admitted racist who he, according to his own testimony, sees him as a nigger?
I wasn't listening. What was the question?
No, she shared her views on what we were talking about earlier. She freely shared her views, and I didn't even ask her a question. She just shared her thoughts on me saying Dr. Moore admitted on the program he is in a sexual relationship with an admitted racist who he, according to his own testimony, sees him as a nigger. And you said...
I didn't see how that relationship's possible because there's always that hatred there. And how can you have full love for a person, compassion, and all that when there's that hatred because he's black?
A nigger. A nigger is what he said, according to his own testimony. I want to make 720 if you're still there.
I'm still here. I am
okay.
Still here. And I have other questions. No. Gus T Renegade. I'm still unclear, and I would like to know if you are clear. Because the white female doesn't, at least as far as I'm understanding, I could be incorrect, she seems not to be clear about how engaging in sexual relations with a non-white person is the worst form. You said, Neely Fuller said, worst form of aggression as opposed to violence. Is that what you said, Gus?
In Mr. Fuller's book, if you read his work, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, he says maximum racist aggression. That's the exact terminology that he uses in his book, sir.
So then, for getting away from his book a little bit, would you consider aggression and violence to be one and the same?
Well, it would depend on what you mean by those two terms. I definitely have used them as synonyms. I would think we could sum it all up as mistreatment. If we said maximum mistreatment of a non-white person, maximum racist act, I would totally agree and say yes. And the non-white male victim of white supremacy known as James Baldwin, if I point you to a book, A Rap on Race, it's a book he did with the admitted white supremacist known as Margaret Mead. In that book, he talks about sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, and he says it is an act of suicide for the non-white person in terms of abusing and mistreating themselves. In my view, it just completely confuses the non-white person and renders them ineffective and incapable of being honest with themselves, and most importantly, unable to be honest about the system of racism, white supremacy. It totally retards their ability to have any sort of honest, competent dialogue about racism, white supremacy.
Okay, so if we're saying that if I'm understanding you correctly, that aggression, maximum aggression, and violence can pretty much be summed up as mistreatment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so if that's the case, then can you help me to be clearer as to why this mistreatment, say, would be worse than, say if a white person were to chop off a non-white person's arms and legs?
I think a lot of people here who can share their view. My view would be that, and Mr. Neely Fuller, actually, if you go to counter-racism.com, there's a clip where he talks about this, and he says it would be better if the white person put a gun to the non-white person's head and blew their brains out, as opposed to having sexual intercourse with them. You can hear that if you go to counter-racism.com, and there are tabs there. If you move the cursor over the tab for articles, it'll say Neely Fuller and a conversation with Neely Fuller and a white person. If you click on it, it's about 16, 17 minutes. Listen to it, and it's there, and he breaks down the why. My reasoning is that it confuses the non-white person. If white people were back to shooting and committing acts of direct violence in terms of chopping up non-white people, shooting non-white people, that would make it very clear what we have. We have white people abusing people who are not white. And that's what I want. I want this to be very clear. This is what we have. This is the problem. This is what we should be working to correct. When you have white people engaging in sexual intercourse with non-white people, many hordes of non-white people confuse that as progress. Things are getting better. See, white people accept us. They're willing to have sex with us. They're willing to marry us. See, we're making progress. I think it's been pointed out. I've heard tons of conversations where victims of white supremacy, non-white people, have pointed to the fact that there's an increase in so-called interracial relationships and marriages, and they point to that as evidence that things are getting better. You can even look at current president, Mr. Obama, who has a white parent. This is consistently used as some sort of evidence that the system of white supremacy is on the wane, and it most certainly is not. If you look at the area of the world known as Brazil, they've had tons of white people sleeping with non-white people. They still have a system of white supremacy. That has not changed at all. The sexual intercourse thing, that's been going on for hundreds of years. That has done nothing to retard the system of white supremacy. In the end, it just confuses the non-white person about what's going on. And in my view, it ends up making it nearly impossible for that non-white person to be suspicious of all white people. They cannot develop a full understanding of racism, white supremacy. They cannot work against it, and they're not going to be able to be suspicious of all white people. There are a lot of other people here that can share their views on this, so feel free to pitch.
No, this is wonderful. This is great. You've given me a lot more clarity. Now, I would love to hear what the white person who is engaging in sexual relations with non-white people has to say about what you just said.
Me too.
Great question.
He just wanted to know what your views are on what I just said.
Yeah.
Gus T Renegade. Yeah, hello.
She keeps practicing racism and avoiding the question. She doesn't even put the phone to her face when she speaks. I mean, this is racism at its finest.
The other white person does have the phone, though, so the caller wanted your feedback as a white person on what I just said.
Yes, and also, Gus, I would like to know what emotions, because I know earlier she said she was feeling uncomfortable or talking about her relationships, and I would like to know if there's any discomfort with what the things you have just said as in regards to sexual intercourse or relations with non-white people being the worst mistreatment.
Okay. I'm going to get her to respond to the first one, and then once she...
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to get her to respond to your first question, and then once she responds to the first question, if you would be so kind as to restate the second one so she can hear it, then she'll respond to that one. But I'm going to get her to respond to the first question, which was just to respond to my comments about sexual intercourse, and then he'll restate the second one.
Okay.
What I heard you say, Gus, was about it's confusing to the victim of white supremacy to be in a relationship with a white person because they would not be able to see as clearly how the white supremacy dynamic is at work. Am I restating it accurately?
Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, I can see how that would be true. And the idealist in me, I guess, would hope that in their interpersonal relationship, the white person could actually, earn the love through their genuine action.
I'm sorry, yeah. I didn't understand any of the last part of what you said. You said you would hope what?
That the white person could not act out the dynamic in the interpersonal relationship, but in the context of a racist society, it's going to be happening. And so I see why that the interpersonal relationship would be confusing, as you're describing it, Gus, to the victim of the white supremacy, yes.
And so knowing that you are directly confusing the non-white person, does that make any difference in terms of the behavior that you would continue or not continue with regards to sexual relations with that non-white person?
Well, with this new understanding, it would change my behavior.
Oh, wow.
Would it change your behavior to the point where, realizing the confusion that you're creating, you would discontinue it altogether?
It would, although I have to say honestly, if I was in a relationship with a person right now, that it would make it much tougher than right now where I'm just sitting here theorizing about it because I'm not actually in a relationship with somebody right now where it's going to cause me to have to separate from somebody I love. But I do have this better understanding from this conversation, and I will definitely be giving it greater thought and consideration in my future behaviors.
So then wouldn't that then make the behavior or acts and or speech and thought that you are saying you are allegedly practicing being an anti-racist be wholly inconsistent?
Could you say that again or expound on what you're saying?
If you are in a relationship with a non-white person, a sexual relationship with a non-white
don't aggravate.
person. Hello?
I'm here. I don't know who was saying that, though.
There are 4 callers on the line.
Okay, I will let the other callers get their...
Oh, no. You're fine. I think someone might have said something. I definitely want you to get your question out because I'm interested in hearing the response, sir. So please hang with us, 720. There are 4 callers on the line. If the other callers could just hang tight, I'll get to other questions. But I'm very interested in hearing 720's question and response. So please, sir, continue with your question. The other callers, we'll get to them as well.
Okay. The white person said that she would find it difficult to stop having sexual relations, if I'm understanding correctly, with a non-white person if she were in a relationship with a non-white person. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I'd be already emotionally involved with somebody.
Okay.
Right now, I'm not, so it's easier to say, that I will consider it in the future. But I'm not having to give someone up or go through that consideration at the moment.
Okay, so then the second part of my question is, if that would be difficult for you to do, being conscious as you are now of the confusion you would be creating and maintaining in the non-white person, then wouldn't it make the thought, speech, and action that you're alleging being an anti-racist wholly inconsistent?
I don't see that, but can you explain to me or give me your perspective on it?
If, and I'll put it this way, in my mind, if you are trying to be against racism, white supremacy, and racism, white supremacy, and I'm just going to shorten it, means that you are abusing and misusing non-white people, then if you would find it difficult to end a relationship where you're having sexual relations with a non-white person, which is the worst form of mistreatment for a non-white person, then wouldn't it be that calling yourself an anti-racist would be wholly inconsistent?
Well, I think I'm picking up a better understanding now of Yellow Manny's description of love as an irrational attraction.
But that doesn't answer my question.
I hear you, sir. It would be because I would want to be an ally for justice and a worker towards justice that I would pass up an opportunity that might be personally appealing to me.
That didn't answer my question.
I'm trying to answer your question.
You know, the answer would be yes or no. It would either be wholly inconsistent or it wouldn't be.
I'm not trying to avoid the question. I guess I just need to give it a lot more thought.
I see. Well, let me give. There is another part of the question.
Okay.
What emotions would you have regarding the confusion that you would be causing by not being consistent in your anti-racist or alleged anti-racist thought, speech, and or action regarding yourself and the non-white person? Was that clear?
What would I be giving up?
What emotions would you have about the relationship knowing that you are mistreating the non-white person?
Feelings would be loss and grief. I feel it right now, and I don't even have a person in my life that this is about.
But loss and grief then regards yourself.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with and I find it interesting that you would speak of the feelings for yourself first, as opposed to any feelings you may have for the non-white person.
Well, to separate from this person that I would be caring about would be loss and grief for me.
And as regards the confusion for the non-white person, what emotions would you have?
I would take it as an action that would be a difficult one to do, but for a purpose that I believe in, that I am willing to sacrifice for.
But that doesn't tell me what the emotion would be.
It would be my emotion you're asking for?
It would be what emotion. Here, I'll give you an example. If I were to hit a child, I would have an extreme amount of shame and guilt for the fact that I have hit a defenseless being in terms of, well, I can barely say that.
I hear the parallel that you're drawing.
But I haven't yet heard what emotions you said emotions that you would have regarding yourself, if I'm understanding correctly, but I didn't hear what emotions you would have regarding the non-white person in terms of the confusion that you're causing for the non-white person.
Yeah, I heard you say shame and guilt, and I can.
No, you heard
that.
me say yes,
yeah.
But that's only. Okay. I have many more questions, but I'm going to give up the line, Gus T Renegade, so that others can ask their questions. Thank you very much.
Please hang out, sir. 720, if you have some more questions, hang out, and we'll go to other folks and see what they would like.
I will. I will.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your question. Very interesting. I learned a lot, sir. Also wanted to say I see counter-racist engineer. I see her in the chat room. Thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Let everybody know her second program will be tomorrow with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Actually, I'm certain that will come up tomorrow, the sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people. So what you can do is tune in tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, CRE 7, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Will be on live with CRE 7. I'm sure they will be talking about sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people. If you're really cool, you'll come back next Sunday, a week from tomorrow, at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern for Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. That'll be 2 consecutive weeks where you will have very informed non-white people speaking about sexual intercourse between non-white people and white people who've written books about this subject matter and spent about 40 years. Yes, Dr. Welsing, third-generation physician, general psychologist, and child psychologist, talking about why it is incorrect. She'll also, next week, CRE 7, she'll also be talking about white people who adopt non-white children. Very interesting. Check out both of those, CRE 7, phenomenal counter-racist work, attempted counter-racist work, I want to be clear. And thank you for supporting in the show. I see you in the chat room. And check out her blog as well, all that good information. You can just go to her site and get all that good stuff. Thank you, CRE 7. I see 4 people on the line. Yellow Manny, do you have questions, comments, feedback?
I want to follow up on the individual who was talking earlier, who commented on Eddie Moore's relationship with the racist. She said that if you don't have sex with white people, are you racist? Which is a question implying that if you don't want to have sex with white people, you're a racist. Is that correct? Is that what you were implying? I'll ask the question again. You said if you don't have sex with white people, are you being racist? So with that, your question seemed to imply that if you don't have sex with white people, you're being racist. Is that correct?
I was talking about any race, but we were talking about the segregation between the whites and the non-colors and separation, whatever. And I just think if you want to be equal to everybody, any race, then I don't think you should segregate any race. No matter which race you are, and you eliminate one race from the equation.
I mean, I would appreciate if you just answer the question.
Well, you can minus the white with any race. It wasn't white specific.
Is the fact that a white person says that you can substitute white for any race, I feel like is practicing racism, because any other race besides white is non-racist. So if you confuse racist
aren't
with
you being
non-racist,
racist saying I'm not going to have sexual relations with this certain race?
I mean, it's the white race that I was specifying. So the question is not any race. The question is you don't have sex with white people, you're racist. I've never said I don't have sex with other non-white people. I said the only one I specified was white people. And that's what you responded to, saying, are you racist, implying that I am. Is that correct?
Well, it's just the same as a white person saying it to any other race. It's just going backwards.
Kelly, you have some thoughts on this? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm thinking that clarification might help here. And what I'm thinking is that when we talk about white supremacy, we're talking about structures of racism where white people have privilege and power. And that we're not just talking about whites as a race among many. We're talking about white supremacy that's the dominant race, and that non-white victims of white supremacy then are in a we're not talking about white and anything else like we're talking about other groups relative to each other. White stands out as supremacist in a society that's dominated by white supremacy.
Yeah, so white is racist. So, I mean, the fact that you say that you can put any race in for white is an ultimate act of deception in the system of racism and white supremacy. You're saying that, oh, we're all the same. Racist is the same as non-racist. I mean, that seems to me that that's practicing racism. And if you could answer the question, though, I said, you said if you don't have sex with white people, are you being racist? Implying that if you don't have sex with white people, you're racist. Is that correct? Is that what you were implying?
I wasn't really implying anything. I was asking a question. Because you were like, oh, I'll have sex with everyone but white.
I think we're talking about a different definition, though, where if I'm understanding you accurately, other white person, you're talking about...
Well, according to everybody's definition, yes, that would be racist. I find it just as racist as, say, a Mexican saying that to a black person or a white person or any other race. I think it's the same as being racist there, too. Why is
so
racist...
you think there's no difference in the races because you keep using them interchangeably. Is that correct?
When you segregate a certain race from, like, saying this is all right, but that race isn't, I think that is racism just as bad as white.
You mentioned that you felt it was just as bad as, and correct me if I'm incorrect, a Mexican saying, I will not have sex with a black person?
Or just like that.
Yes or no? Is that what you said?
As an example, yes.
Yeah,
saying
okay.
it was like,
but is it mistreating for anyone to say I won't have sex with you? Is that mistreating?
As
yes
a
or no?
race, yes, I think.
And we'd have to define race, but for me, as a non-white person, a black person, if anyone really said they don't want to have sex with me, I mean, hey, what can I do?
Yeah.
And it's not mistreatment towards me, though.
But if only a certain race said that, you'd feel racist, right?
I would feel racist.
It'd be an act of racism towards you, right?
So define a race first, and I'd say the only race on the planet is white people. Excuse me. And I believe earlier, I was talking to Kelly and asked if that was correct. The only race on the planet was white people, and she said yes.
I see two others.
Why do you keep not putting...
In the system of, as a definition of racism and white supremacy, we define racism as a global system of people dedicated to mistreating non-white people. So we have two. We have white people who mistreat non-white people. In the system of racism, non-white people are actually not people. They're essentially a fuel.
I think that is a form of racism, but any, like...
We think what is a form of racism?
Well, okay, so there's non-whites and whites. That is racism, right?
Ooh, okay. I'd agree with that. Who defined that?
Non-white.
Does that make any sense? I mean, I'm retarded. I see that. Like, that's
because, like, okay, supposedly...
Even the other white person shaking your head.
We're operating with different definitions, and when we started the conversation, this is Kelly's voice again, we were talking about institutionalized racism and a framework of racism that has to do with white supremacy globally. And if I can attempt to interpret for Nikki, we're talking about prejudice and race prejudice, which is different. And so you almost have to switch into now this definition and have her conversation versus the conversation we were having relative to institutionalized racism.
So the definitions that the racist person was operating under was incorrect ones that would practice racism and confuse victims of racism. So I just want to point that out, that the definition that the racist person was using was ones that would confuse victims of racism. And earlier she said, if you don't have sex with white people, are you racist? Which linguistically suggests that if you don't have sex, if non-white people don't have sex with white people, they're being racist. And so the logical corollary of that is if white people have sex with non-white people, you're being anti-racist. That is a suggestion. Oh, the racist person laughed at this because she thinks it's funny. And this is a racist person who engages in sex with non-white people and practices racism. I think this is very important to note that white people who practice racism think that they can counter racism by having sex with non-white people.
Okay, then why do the non-white people submit themselves, since supposedly white people are more powerful or higher up than non-whites? Then why do they submit themselves to having sex with white people then?
Because we're victimized and confused.
So how can you be victimized if you acknowledge you are? You've acknowledged that, okay, I'm a victim of racism. Then why do you submit yourself? Well, you don't.
Okay. First of all,
most people say, "Oh, I'm a victim of racism," right? You hear that all the time. But
you don't? You don't?
Really? I don't hear that all the time at all.
I hear that quite a bit with other races.
This is another non-white person again. I'd say non-white people, quote unquote, that are what was the word you used?
Victims of racism?
Well, no, you said they are what in terms of sex? They are willing to have sex. Or submitting themselves.
Since whites are more powerful.
I'd say that is evidence. That is evidence of the skill with which white people practice racism.
Okay, then why do other races, non-color or other colors, let themselves be there?
Because white people are very, very good and skilled at practicing racism, white supremacy. I suspect, I could be incorrect.
Are you sure it's not hormones and sex and alcohol involved?
I suspect racism is definitely dominating, white supremacy is dominating the entire situation. And I could be incorrect, but I suspect every single non-white person was informed about the system of racism, white supremacy. That would not happen. And in the cases that it did happen, and the victim was informed about racism, white supremacy, in my opinion, that's insanity. Like, it just doesn't compute correctly. Why would you engage in sex with someone that mistreats you or could be mistreating you?
But what if they're not at that?
Okay.
At an emotional level, they're not mistreating you. But as
at an emotional, I mean, could you define emotions for me?
Well, like if you have.
How about in terms of this world, in terms of life, in terms of the system of
well, I was getting there. So, say you meet somebody of another color, and then they're like, there's that emotional connection and everything. But then,
in terms of an emotional connection, I would encourage all non-white people to check out the Stockholm Syndrome. You should, just check that out. In the context, we have a white person saying, a racist person saying a non-white person being emotionally connected with a white person, a racist person. And further, I'm sure you have. And further, how do you know that a white person is not practicing racism, white supremacy? As long as the system of racism exists, how do you know that a white person is not practicing racism?
How do you know it's not?
I would also like to know that this racist person would continually blame the victim of racism for doing something, and she pointed out how if you're a victim of racism, why do you still submit to it? If someone like steals stuff from your house and you realize you're a victim of theft, you're not submitting to that theft. You're just recognizing the fact that you were victimized by this person. And if this person, again, was to steal more things from your house, the fact that you acknowledge that, hey, I'm a victim of theft, does not do anything and is not blame on you or your fault for someone else stealing things in your home. So by recognizing that you're a victim, in no way places culpability or blame onto the victim themselves. And this is exactly the word games that racist people pull. They blame the victim after they mistreat and practice racism.
Gus T Renegade, context of white supremacy. I'm a little lazy. I don't feel like I want to check the switchboard. If you called in, just hang tight. I'll check in a second.
It's a bunch.
Oh, gosh. I'll go check. Apparently there are people have called in. 720, are you still hanging with us, sir?
I'm still here, Gus T.
Okay.
I'll free up the line.
I was going to see if you had questions. I was going to see if you had some questions, because I can...
I did have a question. I do have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, right ahead. The white woman, I believe, if I'm understanding correctly, said that for non-white people to say they would not engage in sexual relations with white people amounts to racism. Is that correct? Or a form of racism?
The female right now does not have the phone. Actually, hold on one second. Here, put it off speakerphone and give her the phone. Oh, put it off speakerphone. Give her the phone. The caller asked you a question. Okay, can you talk?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. And please correct me if I'm misunderstanding. Did you say that it would be a form of racism for a non-white person to say that they would not engage in sexual relations with a white person in the context of white supremacy?
Oh, sorry, what was that question?
Did you say that a non-white person would be guilty of racism if they were to say that they would not engage in sexual relations with a white person?
I think it goes any way.
I'm
any
sorry,
race, denying any race would be a form of racism, I think.
In the context of white supremacy, and correct me if I'm wrong, did you not say that white people are, to paraphrase, would be the people in the position of an adult, and non-white people would be in the position of children, in the context of white supremacy?
He's asking you if in the system of white supremacy, are white people like adults and non-white people like children?
I don't think so, but why don't the non-colored people or the non-white people educate themselves so they're not children, in your words?
I'm going to point something out. She continually places responsibility for the conditions of victims of racism at the hands of the victims of racism, and continually ignores the fact that it is white people who have enormous amounts of power and manipulate every area of human activity and dominate every area of human activity to produce people who are ignorant and uneducated and confused. And this racist person continues to blame and place responsibility for the victims of racism's condition onto the victims of racism. I mean, this is
I'm not
racism.
Blame. I'm just saying, if you guys feel like you're victims, then don't play victims. Educate yourself.
We're not playing victims. This is not a role play. We are educating ourselves currently,
and then
we're not playing victims. We are being victimized by white people. We're not just playing victims and taking this role and title without any real reality out there. It's a system of racism carried out by racist people like yourself that make us victims. And for you to tell victims of racism to stop, if you're going to play the role, help yourself, is placing blame and culpability onto victims of racism for the things that you do. You practice racism and you're a racist. Then you blame victims of racism for their own problems when you are the one who created them.
Hold on 1 second. That's an excellent point to hold on to make sure we're not blaming victims. 619, ring back in. I had you. I was going to be on, and then you hung up. So 619, you can call back in. Anybody else that wants to call in, 347-21. Wow, that was quick. 619, go ahead.
Yes, this question is directed to the white female who keeps referencing different races. My question is, what is the constructive value to non-white people of the concept of race?
Can you kind of rephrase that?
What good does it do? Does the concept of race do non-white people any good? How does it help them? How does the use of the word race, the use of the concept of race, how has it historically or how is it presently being used in a way that is helpful to people who are not white?
This is Kelly, a different white person than I think you were directing your question to, but I would guess, I'm pretty sure that the concept of white supremacy isn't what the other white woman is thinking about. That's not the framework she's operating in. To talk about white race among many races is more like prejudice rather than about, we're talking about power when we're talking about white supremacy.
Okay, ma'am, I'm not sure that you answered my question.
This is Yellow Manny. I think that's an excellent question. And the racist person, Kelly said that this other racist person was not operating in the same framework. I disagree. I think she's practicing racism, just like white people have been trained to do. And she may not have the same definitions of words, but she definitely has the same concept and frameworks, because she continues to blame the victim and practice racism as we speak. I don't know. I'm not a white person, so I don't have a lot of validity and credibility in what I say, but I would say that just to answer your question, because these white people are not answering it, is there is no good use of race for non-white people. I think it's a very old tactic that always works, of divide and conquer. If the non-white people have a collective interest to fight white people, for them to gain power and stay supreme, they must divide and conquer all groups of non-white people. So that's why you have things like race to divide all different groups of non-white people who have a collective interest to fight racism and white supremacy. And in addition to that, you have things like patriarchy to then cut every group, race, in half again. And then you have things like class to cut up all groups in different areas. And so you have a huge system of divide and conquer, race being one of the most important factors. And so, yeah, that would be my answer to your question.
Hold on 1 second, because apparently a lot of people are tuning in to check out this program. There are 8 people online live. The person who just called in, the number showing up is 111. If you have a question and you haven't asked the question yet, ask now. You should be on live. Just go ahead and talk.
Okay. I don't think every white person is racist.
Are you a white person?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I do think if someone doesn't prefer to date or to have sex with someone who from another race, maybe they're just not attracted to them. And secondly, there's white people who have sex with non-white people who are racist towards that non-white race. You know, I guess sometimes it's to try different things.
You should tell her that she's confused and a victim of racism, because that is incorrect.
Does anyone have a response to what was just said?
Yeah.
said that she didn't believe all white people were racist. You should correct her. You're a white person. You know better. She's ignorant.
Who? What?
What we're talking about with institutionalized racism is that in a society like ours where white supremacy is, white people dominate. We have all kinds of power and privilege because of our skin. And so under that definition, in that framework, all white people are racist. And no non-white person can be a racist. They're victims of white supremacy.
Well,
so that's the working definition.
I disagree, and I kind of agree, because there have been a lot of things that happen to non-whites, from slavery to civil rights to, ongoing, even now, to police abuse. So I do agree, but at the same time, I do disagree that some blacks are not racist. I think some blacks can be racist because of what has happened to them or what they've seen happen to them. Even Hispanics can be racist. But it's a condition of what they see is going on in their own communities.
Yeah, it's perhaps useful to remember we're talking about a system of oppression here that white people perpetrate for maintaining power. And some of us are participating consciously, and some people are just, going along for the ride, just totally oblivious. But we still benefit. And so
I'm not white.
I hear what you're saying.
But
so
I kind of agree and disagree, because I think, I think that some people will be non-racist and some people will be racist because of their own personal experience or what they've seen.
Well, the thing that makes it different from just personal prejudice, say, is the power that's behind it. And so an individual can have prejudice, and lots of people do. But what we're talking about is institutionalized power backing that prejudice up. And if we're talking about racism, we're talking about race-based privilege.
Okay. All right.
May I interject something here?
Feel free, sir.
Yes, to the white female, your name is Kelly?
My name is, yeah.
Kelly, I've consistently, in the course of this conversation, when you referred to the system of white supremacy and the behavior of white people, it's consistently been that you say we benefit, as opposed to saying we, in this system, we abuse and mistreat. Is there a reason why you more consistently say we benefit as opposed to we abuse? In other words, when you talk about the system of white supremacy, I don't hear you say nearly as often. I don't recall at least hearing you say, yeah, you see, but in the system of white supremacy, we abuse and mistreat, as opposed to saying we benefit.
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you tell me why that is?
Let me try to say it. It hurts more, I guess, just to say we abuse.
But do you also
to say that we perpetrate evil?
But do you also think? May I ask? Do you also think that that is also deceptive and therefore confusing to non-white people?
Yeah, right on. You're right.
So I would just have a request. So in the future, and not just the rest of this conversation, but in the future, would you be willing to say that you abuse and mistreat, and you said even perpetrate evil, rather than just say that you passively benefit from a system of racism, white supremacy?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll certainly be more aware and be more thoughtful about it and say this in the future. I resist it in my gut. I'd rather it not be true and don't want to feel that and own that. I think that's just what I'm resisting. But you're right.
Well, the reason I ask is with the confusion that non-white people are continually going through, and with the comments that the non-white female made about other non-whites being racist, I get a sense of a shared confusion. And with you saying we benefit, for me, that only helps her stay more confused. Whereas, as Gus T Renegade has said, if the more accurate words can be used, perhaps, and particularly coming from a white person, perhaps something can be constructively done to begin to help us be less confused.
Point taken.
Pre-7, do you have a question or a comment? I know you're hanging out still.
Yeah, I am hanging out. I did notice that neither of the white females answered the question as to what good the concept or word of race does to non-white people. So having not answered the question, I think a logical conclusion that it has no constructive value for non-white people, but yet it does exist under a system of white supremacy. So I think the logical conclusion is that the only purpose of a race is to practice racism, and that therefore the only people who have demonstrated the qualification to be a race are the people who actually practice white supremacy, because to practice racism are the people who practice white supremacy, because they have proven that they are supreme. Consequently, it is confusing, and they should stop using the term other races when there is only one functional race. That is the people who actually practice the only functional racism, the white supremacists. Therefore, it is impossible for anyone who is not white to practice racism, because they do not belong or are not members of a race. That actually wasn't a question. I could put it in the form of a question, which is that logical to the white female who did not answer the question in the first place?
It's logical to me.
Thank you.
Hearing it from you, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a quick question. I just wanted to know who are the white people at CARW with the decision-making ability or power to, who are they? As far as I understand, there's a group, and then there's a subset of group who are the decision-makers at CAR. I was wondering, what are some of their names? I know we talked about earlier as far as adjusting the name or changing the name of CARW to a more correct or accurate name. I just wonder who were some of the white people who were in the position to make that decision.
This is Kelly again. It's actually a coordinating committee more than a decision-making body. I'd say the whole group would be in on that discussion. Yeah. The subset you're referring to isn't really it's not a hierarchical thing as much as they just coordinate among the projects. So it would be a whole group discussion.
Oh, I see. And so it would be like a vote type of thing amongst the whole group, or would it be just a certain amount of, 5, 10 people who would decide on if that name should be changed or not?
It'll be a whole group discussion. I don't remember if we make decisions by voting so much as we talk it through and reach a conclusion together, more like consensus, I'd say, than voting. I don't remember taking any votes, but...
Okay.
Anyone else? Mic is just open if you have questions, or Back of the Bus has a question, so other folks, you can hang tight. Back of the Bus.
I have a request, Kelly.
Get some back.
Kelly, are you able to hear?
I can hear now.
As a white person and an alleged anti-racist, we've asked a lot of questions about how a non-white person would know that a white person is working against the system of racism and white supremacy. I'd like to request, or I'd like to ask a request of you, as you've stated before, that you benefit from the system of racism. You are dedicated, you promote, and you practice the system of racism. I would like, as a victim of racism, some compensation, specifically with three things. The first, can you hear me, Kelly?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a compensatory request. As you agreed earlier, you benefit and promote the system of racism and white supremacy. As a non-white person, victim of racism, I would like some compensation for the mistreatment and systematic taxation, specifically with three things. The first, if the CARW, or Coalition of Alleged Anti-Racists, could assist the C.O.W.S radio program in acquiring a phone dedicated to attempting to counter racism, that would be very much appreciated. And again, that is a compensatory request. If the CARW organization can acquire a phone and fund the phone with, we'll say, a $70 a month stipend, that would be greatly appreciated. Second, in the home here, this lavish home, where I walked in and I noticed 2 telescopes. And if possible, the Victims of White Supremacy Alliance would like to acquire the telescopes, or one, to inform and educate victims of racism about this earth and the stars that surround it. If that's possible, that would also be greatly appreciated. And third, the Victims of White Supremacy Alliance, an organization, I think the name is self-explanatory, Victims of White Supremacy, who are aligned in attempting to reach a system of justice through thought, speech, and action. Would be very, very grateful if you could assist us with some funding. No set amount. I mean, CARW is a coalition of white people, so if you could set up an event and somehow generate income for the Victims of White Supremacy Alliance, that would also be greatly appreciated.
Okay, well, this is Kelly speaking. The telescopes are my house. They're at my house here, and you're welcome to have one. We can go over which one you want when we're off the phone. And the other 2 requests have to do with the group, and so I can't really speak for the group, but I can commit to talking to the group about it.
Okay, and just for, because I mean this business to get done, the system of racism is really stomping non-whites. It's going hard, and if the coalition of anti-racist whites for some reason disagrees to providing the C.O.W.S radio program with a phone line dedicated to attempting to counter racism, could you yourself take it as your own responsibility to make sure that happens? I mean, you don't have to pay for it. Just make sure it gets done.
I can commit to trying my best and, making every good faith effort to say yes and abide by it.
Okay, appreciate that. And the same with the request for VAWSA, the Victims of White Supremacy Alliance. You could just do your best with that also. If for some reason CARW says no.
And that was for no set amount? I mean,
no set amount. I mean,
yeah.
We're white. I mean, white people should be able to get a lot of income. If not, I suspect, I understand why, but I suspect they're practicing racism. But I'll pass the phone, my retard, excuse me, dyslexia, back of the bus. Over to Gus T Renegade. Any other questions, comments? 3 suggestions if no one does. Non-white people victims of racism. It is strongly suggested that we suspect all white people of practicing racism. Do not engage in sex with white people. It is true. And do not mistreat other non-white people. And be as precise as possible with your words. And as you can see listening to me or hear listening to me, it's something I struggle with, but we can make progress. We have to change our behavior, I believe. I've seen no evidence that white people will stop practicing racism. I encourage all the non-white people to check the archives of the C.O.W.S radio program, specifically the Michael Bradley show. He says that pretty well, that white people will not stop practicing racism. So it's up to us to change our behaviors. Again, back at the bus, signing off. Gus T Renegade, here you go.
Groovy, back at the bus, hanging in, constructively focused. I'll ask Kelly, that's actually excellent point. Have you seen any evidence that white people are going to stop practicing racism supremacy?
I do. I don't know how successful it will be, but I work with this group of people who are working hard to educate ourselves and do what we can within our reach in our community here, and that's something. I don't know if it'll have an impact on the huge, system of white supremacy, but it makes me hopeful.
I guess we'll see if they demonstrate their effectiveness and their dedication to not doing so. We'll be able to see if the VALSA is able to get some compensatory investments from CARW, and if the COWS gets a phone. Hey, you all will know it, because if I get a phone, woo, buddy, I've done 19 programs and have 5,000 listens just from Blog Talk Radio with no phone and no computer. If I get a phone, oh man, Gus T Renegade. Oh yeah, if you all could give me a laptop, man, if you want to talk about effective, boy, there would, yeah, if you.
I would just like to note that if white people try their best, they can fly to the moon. I suspect a phone line and a computer are well within the reach of white people, but that's just my opinion. A group of white people. Yeah, I could be correct. And if I am, I don't know, it might just be racism, but I'm also retarded. I don't know.
So, yeah, we'll tie that together. A laptop, that would be phenomenal. And they have $400 laptops now. I mean, I don't need top of the line. Hey, if the white people can get me the best in the business, that would be great. But, I mean, whatever. If I had a computer and a phone, but as I said, and I've had Tim Wise on the program. I've had Dr. Robert Jensen, Michael Bradley, Noel Ignatieff is coming July 7th. Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly, that's right. I mean, I'm pretty proud of my guest list. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing, Neely Fuller Jr., Bill Ayers. I think I've had a pretty all-star lineup with no phone, no computer, and over 5,000 listens just at Blog Talk Radio alone. I'll put my list up against anybody else as to what I've done. If you think you can do a better job, get your show, and I'll tune in, and I'll cut the cows off and listen to your show. Crease 7, she might be able to do it. I'll listen to her show then. Oh, yeah. Back of the bus, his tidbit, Neely Fuller Jr., victim of white supremacy, and he's been on the show as well. He says the people who have the ability to replace white supremacy with justice do not have the will. The people who have the will to replace white supremacy with justice do not have the ability. Hey, I think we have some folks here who have the will. Just need a little help. Hopefully CARW will be able to, help us out a little bit. That would be phenomenal. Oh, that Ember, yes, sir. We're making sure we have no fire. 720, if you're still there, if you have a question or a comment that you would like to contribute, feel free.
I have a comment, Gus T Renegade.
Yes, sir.
I find your show to be one of the most constructive and useful shows, if not the most, that I've listened to. For clarity and for gaining a greater understanding. I don't know how to thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, sir. I'm thankful that some non-white people have found the programs constructive. If it has aided your understanding of racism, white supremacy in any way, then I thank the guests first and foremost, because I doubt it's been anything I said, but I'm thankful for the guests for coming through and sharing their information. And if you think the show is constructive, please share it with other non-white people. We need more folks. Obviously, I'm demonstrating that me alone is not going to solve this problem, so try to get as many non-white people as you can to become more aware of racism, white supremacy, and get them motivated to do things, whether it's getting programs or DVDs, books, anything that they can do to contribute. That would be extremely helpful. But I definitely thank you for the support. And, continue to call in because I have thoroughly enjoyed your questions, sir.
Thank you, and I will do. Thank you.
Right on. Did you have another one, sir? Does anybody else have questions, comments? The non-white team or the white team? Anyone else? Is that it? Kelly, if you want to share anything before we wrap this one up, if everybody is good. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. This with the non-mighty Wick. Do you have a question, comment? Comment. Go ahead.
I want to say that the focus of all correct-thinking people should be to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Oh, Yellow Manny has a comment before we let go.
I totally agree with the previous statement. I would just also like to note that justice is life, is peace, and is freedom. These are all the same things that we're striving for, but so if we're just aware that these are all the things that we want, these are things that all people want, I think it'd be very helpful. But you can't have racism is the exact opposite. It's injustice, and that's why you have to counter racism if you want justice, because this is the greatest injustice on the planet.
Right on.
Right on. I will third that for sure. Back of the bus, did you have a question, comment before we close the program out? Oh, he said 3 suggestions. No sexual intercourse between non-white people and white people. There's no exception. Do not mistreat any non-white people for any reason. Minimizing contact will help a lot towards that goal. Minimize contact will minimize conflict. And suspect every white person of being a racist in the system of white supremacy. No exceptions, Yellow Manny is saying, because it is true. Kelly herself said early in the broadcast, it is true. All white people, no exceptions, are racist white supremacists under the system of white supremacy. Be suspicious of every white person and how you engage with them. Kelly, if you want to give our listeners a final thought or tell them anything about CARW before we sign off the program.
No, I agree with the concept of working together to dismantle racism and white supremacy. And I'm dedicated to that and learned a lot tonight. Appreciate hearing about these issues and having them be right on the table so frankly. Thank you.
We thank you. I thank you for hosting us. We have sat, this is the first program I have done not only outside at a fire with brownies, chips, brews, in the middle of the we have like a little Stonehenge here in Seattle to observe the summer solstice. Only white people can come up with this. Wow. Well, I don't know what it is now. I would need a white person to explain to me what I'm looking at here. But it is, we have enjoyed ourselves. I hope the program is constructive. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to listen on their Saturday evening. Thank everybody for pitching in. I want to thank Back of the Bus for the use of the phone. Thank Non-Mighty for use of the laptop, constructive material. Thank Yellow Manny. He was able to allow me to use the phone for the previous program for the cows. Please tune into the archives. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, please subscribe. Link is in the description. You're not listening at, for sure, share with your friends, other non-white people, if you think it's constructive. If you don't think it's constructive, please invest your time and energy in something else that you think will be productive. Also, make sure you check out counter-racism.com, Edward Williams' website. They have lots of programs, lectures. Dr. Welsing has information there. Neely Fuller has stuff there. The COWS is rebroadcast there. Lots of constructive information that you can check out. And again, I do not accept criticisms for my programs. If you have thoughts, if you have a question, feel free, but I don't take criticism for my program just because there are not that many people doing this. There are like 5 of these programs. If you don't like it, get your own program. The road is wide open for anybody who wants to do this work. If you don't like what I'm doing, feel free. You can go to Blog Talk Radio and start a show today. So instead of criticizing me, demonstrate how to do this better, and I'll listen to your show and plug your effort. Gus T Renegade, The Context of White Supremacy. Catch your next broadcast. Noel Ignatieff, author of How the Irish Became White. He will be here July 7th. That should be a very interesting broadcast. Make sure you check that out. I will catch you all later. Thank you for listening. Yeah, we're done. Oh, Neely Fuller tomorrow. That's right, Crease 7. Neely Fuller, he will be on Crease 7's program on June 21st at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing will be on June 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. Check both of those programs out. Crease 7 doing excellent counter-racist work, attempted counter-racist work. Gus T Renegade, Context of White Supremacy. Thank you. We are done.